In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another lecture. Okay. All right. So, a species that noticed its outdated operating system, finding visions of greatness. Okay. So, we have to begin from one position. I'm a visual thinker, so I visually communicate. And so I need to find a visual to access the concept usually. And so when I say a species that its operating system is outdated, the visual that arises in my mind is considering everything I know about civilization and the world that I'm currently seeing, and considering that it is in some sense not the most advanced version. It's a matter of like the topic I'm talking about. It's a matter on, it's a point of discussion about. It's a matter of you being satisfied with yourself right now, you know? And so, isn't it funny that we as human beings are not satisfied with ourselves, and we are constantly seeking improvement. However, when it comes to the civilizational intelligence, it is not the case, right? That means there's many people going to the gym, they're training their bodies, but how much of the human life is a service to mankind? For me, I feel that the operating system hasn't updated. And for the longest time, I was trying to figure out why, and I understood it, but the problem is too complex. And if I was to explain it to you, it would be something like this. Okay, we as humans, in the design of the system we find ourselves in, pretty much human beings, the story is like this to simplify. There's an unknown world, unknown selves arise. These unknown selves, in some sense, become known selves to themselves. They notice themselves. Okay? After they noticed themselves, they noticed that there was a gap or an absence that they could fill. And that gap was the gap of what is the meaning to what we see. The point I'm trying to make is that at some point in the natural evolution of the human being, okay, rather than the environment and the ecosystem moving us, pretty much we have diverted from a natural evolution to a subjective evolution. The ideas on reality are being treated now as more real than the reality itself. There used to be a time where everything was unknown. We didn't even have the concept of an object. So we generated concepts, we found, in some sense, ways of conceiving. And pretty much we are inside a subjective life. So the objective evolution of human beings has shifted from more a natural, like it's very obvious. The ways we live are not based on natural environments. They are based on unnatural designed environments. What humans have been doing is that more and more as the years have passed, they have been living inside their own creations to the degree that it's very obvious. Back in the day, they found themselves in a world that they did not create. They might have contained it through meaning, but they did not create the world. It was very clear to them that they had arrived somewhere. Well, I was born in 1991. As a person being raised, as a human being raised from that time, it is very clear. It is very clear to me that it is the idea. Pretty much unknown selves emerged out of an unknown world. They became known selves. They started making the world into a known world. Now our brains are more comfortable with the familiar than the unfamiliar. And because people are stepping less into the unfamiliar, the system is looping. It is very obvious. It's like that argument they made that there were like, more than 10 ways of flight. But after the airplane, the Wright brothers made the airplane work, all the other methods were forgotten. We're living in a world where people think it's smarter not to reinvent the wheel. It makes sense. But sometimes when you reinvent the wheel, you begin to see what the inventors missed. Okay, and I firmly believe that civilization is a collaboration between a species' inventionism, you know, and also natural consequences. There are systems beyond us. One thing that I use to kind of make sense of human consciousness is that I wonder about its interaction and relationship with lower species. I pretty much I have noticed that any being that finds itself superior to other beings, of course, based on its psyche and position, how do I say it? It's like when power has nothing to lose, it helps. When power has something to lose, it destroys. Okay, and the issue is that human beings, waves of them, there's 8 billion of us, they are moving into more powerful positions. It's like trying to think about the economy and civilization the other way around. If it had started from everybody being rich and then us realizing the impracticality of not having an incentive to build stuff. This existence is imperfection, your suffering, your incompleteness as a soul in this world. It is intentional and it is designed to shift the contextual meaning to reality. You know, when we wonder about the advancement of civilization, you cannot ignore the waves of occurrence, what has actually occurred, and the type of reality there is even present. When we wonder about the sophistication of the human psyche, we're wondering about how has intelligence responded to the content in the space. To me, there's like three elements to the system of life, or there's three factors to the moment. There is an objective factor, there is a subjective factor, and then there is another factor. And just like we have three states, we have in like the sciences, we have solid, liquid, gas. That's the exact way of saying somebody being secular, a materialist, a spiritualist, and in some sense, someone who is religious. To me, there's a difference. There's a difference between all of these. There is a difference between a human being that is responsible and has access to the realities of the body. There's a difference between a human being that has access to the realities of the mind. And there is a difference for the human being that has access to the realities of the soul. The reality of the soul is the superior life. Any human being who gets to that point where you are living the life of your soul, not the life of your mind and body, you're a very advanced being. Good job and keep it up. Examples would be Mother Teresa and like Keanu Reeves. These human beings, they have attained the mercy of the system. Admin has in some sense shown them the contrast of the dualistic nature of reality. Therefore, these beings no longer are seeking psychological satisfaction. They are seeking, they're listening to their heart. So I'll give you examples of these. You see a human being that's just physically oriented, you know, or I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example of three different types of men. Okay, imagine there's a beautiful woman. Okay, a beautiful soul. Now, there's a guy who looks at this woman and sees only her body. He gets drawn by her body, physical reality. The physical reality, it pulls the soul more than, in some sense, anything else. So there's let's say one beautiful woman. There's one guy, okay. He just sees the physical reality, just sees the physical body, and it's like, okay, what a next level machine, something, right? There's that level. Then there's another guy that wonders, okay, I see her physically. What is her mind like? How does she make decisions? What is her personality? You know, what is her understanding of reality? What is the actual being that is looking behind her eyes? That's the question of the mind, right? So that person is not wondering about, okay, what is the objective value of this woman? They're wondering about what is the subjective value. Do you understand? That's a person being conscious on the level of mind. That means it's not about how we're just objects together. It is about the subjects that arise when we're objects together. So the second guy is looking at a woman and wondering about her mind. Okay, who is she? What does she do? What is her personality? Do we have the same values or not? Do you know? Is this a trap or not? In some countries, you got to think like that. You know. Anyways, where I'm going with this, we have the third guy. So the first guy accessed the realm of body. He just saw the body of the woman. The second guy saw the mind, was seeing events, right? And the third guy, he in some sense loved the soul. Now, what is that? That's what I'm trying to tell you. The Mother Teresa, Keanu Reeves level. Okay, they reach a point. I am telling you, especially for younger people, older people, you probably know this. At some point in life, it becomes obvious that listening to one's heart, whatever that means to you, is more important than listening to, I'm sorry, like, you see, one of them is zoomed in on the solid aspects of reality. One guy is focused on the liquid, more fluid aspects of reality. And then the last guy, it is about presence. You know, one guy loved her body, one guy loved her mind, the third guy loved her whole presence, you know? And the third guy has it the toughest, I think, because when you love someone without a reason, you will also do anything for them without a reason. That's the dangers of, I think, love. The thing I've understood, where for the longest time I felt like, yo, man, I feel more like an android than a human that actually, you know, feels love, but I've come to understand that it's what we can't live without. I'm starting to realize that those are the things that I love. And you got to be very careful in this life because how life treats you is not how you should treat people. The system is designed to create enough turbulence so you don't get isolated into a fixed sense of self in a changing world. So there's going to be duality, there's going to be contrast. One day things are going to happen easily, one day they're going to happen hard. In Islam, in the Holy Quran, it says after hardship comes ease. So, there is a power balancing or maintaining. Let me tell you this way: if there was an argument that there is a system admin, there is a system admin. But if the argument was about a system administrative intelligence behind the scenes of this world, this system administrative intelligence is calculating. I can see it that it calculates. This system administrative intelligence behind everything in this world calculates. Let me tell you what it calculates: the amount of intensity you're meant to experience. I'll give you an example. You know, I was sitting on the, where was this? Sorry, thinking of a different one. Pretty much, there's okay, let me think of examples here. I'll give you an example. Okay, there was a guy. This is a long time ago. I don't know if it was at a bank or a doctor's office or what it was, where it was, but it was somewhere. I was much younger. The shyness and introversion had still a very harsh grip on me. You know, And anyways, though, I was in this moment. It was like this square room with chairs all around, and there was a table, and there were these two kids, younger kids playing, right? And there was this one guy that was oblivious that these kids were playing behind him, and he was legit just talking to the lady at the counter, and one of the kids falls behind this guy's shoe. I don't know how to explain it. Like if the guy just stepped one step back accidentally, he would have stepped on the kid, right? And so the parents of the kid are there, everything's there, everybody's there, and I remember there being watching this moment, right? And right before the conversation of the guy finished, the kid got up, and it was as if something invisible in that moment was calculating the positioning, the sequence of what happens. So I am telling you guys, sure, we can act oblivious. We can identify with this outdated operating system that it's just what we physically see. And that's when we still have optical illusions. So I just are like, yo, man, I got to see it to believe it. And then they go to magic shows where they can't understand how the magician did it. I'm like, buddy, what's the point of seeing then? If you can't see clearly, if you cannot see all angles, if there's a part of this cosmos that has an unobservable universe. We use those terms. Like, look at this, guys. So they don't see it. Some people don't see it, but I see it, man. These fucking, like, excuse my language. All human beings have greatness within them, but it must be activated correctly. And it must be activated at the right time by the system admin. That means your greatness is activated by a higher power. The use of your greater intelligence is not for you. That means I'll say it this way. So, guys, pay attention to what I'm saying here. If you want to do something, if right now, imagine me and imagine I'm wondering about how can I be the most intelligent being on this planet. Okay. Now, aside from the fact that there's a system admin governing the values that are assigned, okay, how do I say it? The greater intelligence of the human being is not activated by the human being. It is designed to be collaborative with the higher power. The reason you're designed with the lower power, in the position of the lower power, is to have a relationship with the higher power. In theology, okay, one of the biggest questions that they ask is, why did God need to create mankind? Why does God need to see us, in some sense, be imperfect? Why wasn't a perfect creation made from the beginning? Now, years ago, the Holy Quran is such an advanced revelatory text that it is 100% not from human. 100%. It's not written by just a being limited to the conditions of existence. Okay, this is why it can't be replicated. The awareness that, in some sense, positioned the meaning in that book is not, is, how do I explain it? There is a host here. The fact that we haven't noticed is the reason we have been suffering without understanding why. Okay, so there is a system admin here, more important than you listening to a talk, meditating, I don't know, like putting crystals under your pillow. More important, you need to open your eyes one day, look at this world, and ask yourself very deeply, is it intelligent? Is there intelligence here? Right? And you have to make the decision deep down based on your experiences on whether you are living in an empty box or the opposite. It became clear to me in 2023 that there is a system admin here, okay, that there is higher intelligence, that many human beings are still getting lessons of surpassing their egos. Human beings are identifying with the content, they're not identifying with the position of their being. The position surpasses the content. That means, like, when you think of yourself as a being, you're like, yeah, man, I got a body, I got a name, I got memories, I got like, there's something there. It's like you're this package. Okay, now I'm asking you, where have you been packaged into a position of being? You see, it is the might of the advanced. Now, if you ask me, hey man, were you raised around, the greatest beings on earth? Were you raised by the greatest beings? Were you raised by the most advanced powers in this realm? And I would say, in my view, yes. My parents, I love my parents, they're awesome. But from the perspective of authority, no. That means when you're younger, the ideas you have on yourself are you. But as you get older, you experience your real self through the cracks of all the artificial moments you lived through. Okay, and you get to see your nature. You get to see your soul. Okay, you get to see how you as an intelligence respond, and you shouldn't judge it. Some people are judged. It's one of the this is the reason I'm going to war with the linguistic simulation, right? You might be like, yo man, look at this, silly podcast, they're trying to give talks. That's what you see. You don't see that we are in it can be considered a spiritual war, but people are not getting possessed by demons. They're getting possessed by language and ideas. And for me, I cannot witness in the same way. Okay, you guys want to know why I give these talks? In the same way, if I was in a crowd of people and aliens started invading and they started going on the heads of people and controlling them, in that moment, I would probably, do you know what I mean? Like, grab lemon juice or something or alcohol or something and go try to fight these aliens. You know why? And get them off people's heads. Why? Because because I don't know how to explain this to you. It's just this in there in our design. In the same way, if your siblings, your family members, your friends were under attack, a part of you, like that part of you will unleash. Do you know what I mean? Right? But it has to. But you have to maintain the beast, or you'll become a beast. You got to be very careful. We don't want like a drive elevators. People have to have control, or you're still unevolved. Okay, people think being violent, angry, and intimidating is power. Do you understand? They don't understand it's de-evolution. We evolved so we don't kill each other on the spot. If we were still in that time, I'll tell you. Do you know what I mean? Like back in the day, like in medieval times, like I don't know, a medieval boy who was an apprentice of a baker was more alpha than the biggest gangsters of today. Do you know what I mean? The intensity that they naturally accepted. Right now in 2026, being a biological being is very easy. But if you read my science fiction, as soon as I publish it, if you read my science fiction, you're going to see that there's going to come a time where in the future, humans are going to fight to remember what it was like to be now. You don't understand because you haven't seen the future. And our minds are here to be used. Like, guys, I'll be honest, right? Legit what ChatGPT is doing, our brains were doing. Our brains were doing that. Do you know? Now we go and instead of having thinking about the thought on ourselves and our brain generating answers, now we go and ask the questions by assuming a database knows more than a living soul. It's such a funny time we're alive because we don't know the value of what is alive and we're living through it. You know, like today we got to drive cars. We got to put the key in the engine. We got to go fill gas. I can see the future. Is it really that hard, folks? Everything that can be automated can be automated. Now, this is going to get very interesting because this is where we will see God's mercy. Okay. Um, yeah. So, anyways, back to how our species has reached the time where it is capable of noticing. It is unupdated. That means, how would you feel if I told you you're living an unupdated life? Or how would you feel if I told you you're living in an outdated self? And you'll be like, no, I'm not. And I'll be like, sorry, man, you don't have a choice because it's an outdated world. Because everybody's being born and trying to fit into an outdated operating system. We're wondering why the new operating system isn't happening. At some point, the members of the species has to be like, all right, let's update the operating system, guys. The outdated operating system has been giving us subjective identity signatures, so pretty much in an outdated operating system for the human species is not prioritized first, and that is the weirdest thing. They say the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? But it seems to me that we need a universal declaration of human values. Guys, I'm not even kidding, right? Because we are living at a time where the idea of what will happen is can stop us from actually happening. Do you know what I mean? That means imagine that there's lies. Okay, like I think everybody knows what a lie is, right? Like we also know that any human being is capable of lying, right? And what is lying? Lying is when we don't have awareness of something and then we're given an inaccurate, a misrepresentation of a reality. Okay? So I want you to feel, imagine if people lied to you and you found out, how would you feel? You would feel anger. You would feel like, what the fuck? Or like, why? Why didn't they tell me? It would push you into an existential question. You know, guys, in the subtitle, I wrote Finding Visions of Greatness. When I came to give this talk at first, I wanted to write something in the subtitle, and then I thought it's you know, distasteful. I wanted to say that as a human being alive on this planet, I have reached a state of awareness where I call it eerie occurrence. I have successfully managed to climb out of the scholar simulation. I do understand that reality has a significance that surpasses verbs and nouns. Or if we're living in a world that is just known nouns, I consider that there's unknown verbs. To discover the presence of a higher functioning system. I believe none of you care about like success unless it gives you more access. I think humans are these beings that have an original memory from the moment they were commanded into existence. And that is why we seek more than the environment. There is something within us. I'll give you an example. Imagine you've been living in a box, you've been living in a room. They open this room and they show you the full house, right? After they show you the full house, you're not going to be living in that room anymore. Now you know, like Plato's allegory of the cave, now you know that there is more to it. And I'm asking you right now, how do you know there is not more to everything? I know it feels like life feels like we're knights, like dressed in armor, and we're just ready for something, but we don't see a war. We don't, we like this world is hilarious. It puts you in a position. It does the character customization if it was a video game, but you have to go find the quest. You have to go find the mission. Okay. And so we're living at a time where the younger generations are more comfortable in digital expression than non-digital. Even myself, like I guess I fall into that category. I found it very convenient to like not show my face, right, and to you know just use an alias and speak. You know I think it was what's his name? I think it was Oscar Wilde. He's like, give a man a mask and he'll tell you the truth. You know, we are a species capable of recognizing old patterns and new patterns. The point of this lecture is to one, make you realize it's an outdated system. There's many proofs of this, but the best proof is that you have a mind that shows you, for example, in our minds, we can envision flying cars, we can envision sky cities, do you know? But we haven't built them in the outer realms. We haven't commercialized them in the outer realms. Therefore, the mind is the proof of your potential because it gives you a probability and simulation of it. As a human being that entered this world, and this was the blessing, this was the strange advantage. So when it comes to so think of it this way: human beings are being born, children are being born. Children usually go through a social development, and this is based on rough and tumble play in childhood and just the child feeling comfortable being an entity. But some children are born and they're raised, and I don't know, something goes wrong, whether based on the parents or not the parents, based on the child itself or its destiny, right? And something happens that the child does not feel comfortable being itself when it's young. When a child doesn't feel comfortable being itself when it's young, it doesn't make decisions because that's what being yourself is. It is making decisions, right? Making decisions you can live with, right? This is why children run up to their parents when they don't know what to decide because they don't know what to value. They're they don't know what to trust really. Okay, and the biggest issue it is that civilization is either making you trust the system or distrust it, and trusting the system is very important. So when that young child who doesn't trust itself goes through life around people who trust themselves, okay, and express themselves, that means one child, I don't know, gets to express itself, the other child doesn't. Now, society tends to believe like, oh, poor child didn't get an experience, didn't get to express himself or whatever, right? What they don't understand that there is no mistake, it's just a different specialization. By being a human being that expressed himself less, it was as if I had less memories of failure. Okay. And at the same time, I was more comfortable with seeing problems being solved and solving them, you know, until I reached a moment where I realized, I'm sorry to say this, I don't know how to say this politely, but none of you know Jack. None of you, nobody knows. You don't understand. Up to 2023, I think I did a good job of talking about all the different like metaphysical systems, even incorporating new age ideas in there, you know? But I'm telling you, when you go to a business meeting, you have the intention of going there and communicating to someone specific. Let's say if you want to go and do business with another business, you need to go and talk to the owner. Okay, so you can go into that building. There could be 100 different people, and none of them can solve your problem or help you except the owner. Okay, so if you suddenly found yourself in a giant building with lots of people, and there was no, and you'd probably go and find the owner, okay, the owner of that institution. Well, guess what, folks? Let me unravel religion for you. That's what it is. We're trying to find the owner and original position of reality. And we're realizing the original is unconditional. So, where am I going with this? I do understand that, like wearing clothing, okay, everybody has to wear clothes or they're going to get cold or they're going to, I don't know, hurt themselves, right? So, on some level, we as human beings don't disagree that we need to put on clothing, okay? Now, I want you to imagine that the ideas you are functioning through or believe are like the clothing you have put on. Okay, more than like so. For example, this is the issue of people not having this advanced recognition. If I come and ask you, like, okay, let's say, if I come and ask you, who do you like, or I come up to you and say, choose one, Messi or Ronaldo, you know, or if you come and ask me, choose Messi or Ronaldo, I'll tell you, like, I just out of allegiance to being raised on Ronaldo even before Messi was a name. There was Ronaldo, and Ronaldinho. But the word Ronaldo has like, it has fame. You know, like I'm pretty sure, like in the FIFA Hall of Fame, you know, there is, a prophecy that another Ronaldo who will have exceptional skill will arise. Like I'm sure there's going to be like probably like 12 Ronaldos in the history. You know, yeah, they're like, oh my god, all the best soccer players change their name to Ronaldo. Imagine somebody names their son, I don't know, Ronaldo Messi. And those like first name Ronaldo, middle name Messi. You know, and then they're gonna be like, I don't know why this kid is always fighting with himself. But jokes aside, if I tell you to choose between Ronaldo and Messi, let's say in that instance, you say, I believe Ronaldo is the better player. But that doesn't mean, that just because I believe that Ronaldo is because I like Ronaldo more, that Messi is not a savant autistic genius when it comes to soccer. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what Cristiano Ronaldo realized. This guy, his brain is wired different. You know, so the point of it is that it's a belief. It is not the real you. It is the clothing you wear in that instance. Okay, so a person's opinion is the ideological clothing they're wearing, or better said, like the way they're looking at things. To me, somebody could physically be beautiful, but the way they look at things could be very ugly. Somebody could be physically beautiful, and the way they look at things could be very beautiful, but the things that end up happening to them and the decisions they make seem to be consequentially ugly. You know, and I firmly believe this world is trying to teach us that the value of the world surpasses the world. And this is the issue that the secular audiences face. You know, like I can't believe in all these years nobody went to Richard Dawkins, like Christopher Hitchens. Guys, you don't know. I'm someone who has a very like huge appreciation for people who have also been here before me. Like one of my hobbies is just figuring out fascinating human beings that existed in reality. And it's ultimately a strategy. Pretty much you as a being are wondering about the greatest outer realm strategy, the greatest strategy in front of your eyes, the greatest lifetime strategy in front of your eyes, and the greatest strategy behind your eyes. Somebody in the chat section says unconditional. Does that mean I have to be here forever? It was Father that spoke the lines into the void for form and shape. I'm just the one who hangs on to not lose the mind. Okay, that's very heavy. Um, I understand it this way. I understand that if I went to a business and if I opened my eyes and I was suddenly an employee of a business, I had no clue what the business was about, who the owner was, and why I was even there, and the value of the work I'm doing. Like, I'll be honest, right? Like, the value of my work, a part of me is like, okay, externally, what happens? Internally, what happens? And you have to at some point accept it. This is the harsh truth. They don't tell you. You have to accept what you are, you know? Or, sorry, not the idea of yourself, it's just the result of yourself. And, you know, throughout the years, I thought I was doing a good job with these talks. But, when talking to some of the listeners, longtime listeners, I've come to realize that they are receiving more feelings than the ideas. Um, Is it? All right, let's get some music going on here. And let's go back to the notion of the outdated operating system. So, ladies and gentlemen, as a soul that has been running towards the clarity he has sought his whole life, and come to the realization that the unconditional presence of intelligence in the moment surpasses, in some sense, the formed display as an individual that has a designer. That has a designer soul, that in some sense it was easy for me to dwell in Plato's world of forms, and as someone that is no stranger to geometry, that means you are listening to a human being that, imagine an animal, imagine like a squirrel, or imagine like a bird or something that's super, imagine a cat, like a kitten that is dying of thirst, and imagine a human being like pouring water for that kitten, you know? It's like subconsciously, I know I will not be this forever, but why am I being this now? And is it just for it to be maintained? Are we here to just loop in a satisfactory reality, thinking we lived a good life because we were like the others? Could it have been that we got it all wrong, that every one of us should have been different, that the weird ones were living correctly, that what we call normality is in some sense the massive conditioning of a species? My slow hand clap. I don't even care if there's evil elitist cultural engineers. Just the fact that they have been able to keep the eyes of the human species shut this long, Because for me, let me tell you what's one of the biggest questions I have, and I'm a Muslim, and I choose to live my life in accordance to this view from this poet Rumi, where he says, before death takes away all that is given, give away all that there is to give. I live my life based on this. I know that this body is just here for some time. I know this voice and thoughts and mind is like this now. And all I can do is march towards the truth that has called my heart. That means, I don't know if you guys remember, but as kids in school, when they would call your name and you would have to stand up and go to like the top of the class, I feel I have been called by the experiential presence of the original reality of the realm. That means, who says that you need to go into the afterlife unconsciously? Who says that the death has to be a surprise? This doesn't mean we end our lives. This means that you don't even think about death. You live this life and you become aware of this life so much that, I don't know how my mind has heard stories to kind of pass them on to this era, right? But when I was young, there were spiritual stories of they would call them Olia, okay? And it means those that the system admin has brought close, okay? And you don't know who it is. It could be like you could see some tattooed, thugged up, like guy, having a chain in his hand, okay? But that guy could be God fearing, and like, some young kid is in trouble and that guy is like has an intimidating protective presence and saves that kid from like hooligans or something, you know? Right? So I'm telling you, that's the point, folks. We are here playing a game. What is my value? What am I? Oh my god, what should I be? We're playing this weird ass game when the system functions like we're antennas, and those who pick up the signals know how to act. The signal gives it. That means you might be looking at me here and being like, "Yo, man, how does this guy know how to speak? How to say, communicate his inner realms?" Is because the skill is in the signal I receive. Somebody in the chat section says it's my journey to become content with purpose. I just can't see what all has been sown. Okay, this is some next level poetry in the chat. You know, whoever's writing this, like, you write a poetry book and dedicate it to, Mr. Within Civilization 2.0, yo. So, really, what can I say? I'm that human being making a claim that it's not updated. It's not an updated operating system, and it's giving errors. And these errors are normal, but to individuals, collective events are always new. I treat life, when they said it's a staircase to heaven, I firmly believe in that view. I believe that there is levels to this. I believe that being close to God, the story, I forgot to finish it. So the story of the Oliya, so when I was young, I heard spiritual stories of people, okay, who they knew the day they were gonna die, right? And their attitude was very different. I'll tell you two examples. We have Che Guevara, which was one of the most bravest souls in history. Oh my God. To me, Che Guevara is like, I don't know, one of God's next level creations. Because Che Guevara, at the end of his life, I don't know if people know this, pretty much like some next level stealth, like commando assassin comes and kills him, right? Which is so scary because he probably saw the guy like sneaking, up to him, right? And he looks at him, and Che Guevara's last words are like, I don't know, he says like, you can kill me, you coward, but you can't kill an idea, right? And then there were these ancient men. I shouldn't say ancient, but like back in the day, there's stories of this very pious religious men, okay, who lived completely by the heart, okay? That means they lived dearly and they had dear endings, okay? And so this is a story of back in the day in certain Islamic, or let's say even Turkish cultures, they had these cylindrical wool red hats, mainly from Turkish culture. Okay. And so there was this one guy who had such like he was conscious as a presence of the system's divine system. He was conscious of the divine reality. Okay. So this young kid is having a conversation with this guy, the old guy, in the market, in the bazaar back in the day. And so the young kid says, you can't, death can't be done free willingly. Like, he's not talking about suicide. He's saying like a human cannot consciously leave their body. It was a community where they believed in the soul, right? So the guy was making the point that the soul can't leave the body. It's God's decision. We're kind of in like some setup game. Now, this guy who was so close to God and pious, he's like, no, it can be. Do you know? And he puts his cylindrical hat on his ear, puts the hat against the wall, and like how you would place a rake on a wall, he leaves his body and he just dies. Right? He just gently takes his last breath and he leaves. And this kid realizes that his beliefs on reality is just mind forged, is an error. And that is the outdated nature of the system. It is not an issue of treating yourself as an object. It is not an issue of treating yourself even as a subject or series of subjects or a memory trail. The issue is only thinking you are that, because what you actually are cannot be named. Wake up from the linguistic simulation. It cannot be contained in a concept. The mystery of human life surpasses how ideas make sense, folks. That's the excitement of it. Do you understand? It's more than what you see. That's the point. Now, you know what's fascinating? What I have been doing with these talks is not to fricking teach people stuff. If you see me as a teacher, shame on you. Do you know? I am someone pointing to the rest of reality we haven't noticed, because we're looping in the known self is looping in the known world, and all of you are forgetting about your unknown presence in life. It's about an activation of power with an administration of will. The viewers don't know this, but I'm gonna probably be. I thought, like, I felt a calling towards this, that I'm gonna be. Um, okay, this is one of my New Year's resolutions. Okay, but I'm trying to be a gaming streamer. Do you know? And trying to, I guess, animate the Mr. Within personality in the digital universe more. But what you guys don't know is that I, due to having a OCD, in a sort of existential OCD, you know, like I have a sort of organization to my mind, and I think when that organization applies to video games, it'll be interesting for viewers to see the decisions I make in those video games. So, guys, yeah, there's gonna be a Mr. Within gaming channel. You know, so there's this game I play called League of Legends. Okay, and this is a game that I did not. It's funny, just like anime, it was something that was introduced to me. Do you know? That means I used to play games when I was like 15, and then I didn't play games for, like, video games for like the longest time. And then there came this situation where I went abroad, and my brother and this other friend I had at the time, Gabriel, we would play this game, League of Legends. Okay, when I was abroad, it was a way, it had a voice chat, you know. So it's a game I've been playing throughout the years, and what's interesting is everyone else that I've been playing with, this game has not improved in this game as much as I have. Okay, do you know? And at one moment it clicked to me that life is the same thing as this game. Okay, right? And it's about a prioritization of the correct values. The reason people are going towards religion compared to the secular ambiguity of majority vote on whatever is meaningful to the ambiguous majority, do you know? Religion has sequences, has algorithms, which is another way of saying has a sequence of values prioritized. Religion tells you how to prioritize reality. Do you know? But a person who has the burden of reorganizing all of existence itself, one, you can't have the certainty to even do that. And there will be errors in it because you're not a perfect being, right? You're a conditional, imperfect entity, which is another way of saying humans know they are incomplete, but they are trying to act in society like we're all perfect and complete because society, the linguistic simulation has brainwashed us in acknowledging that way. I'll give you an example. Imagine there's an ugly person and there's a beautiful person. Okay, right? And you see these two people. Okay, and let's say it's a dating show or something, you have to be with one of these people. Okay, right? Now you go with the beautiful person, but the beautiful person legit is making you into a worser person. Do you know? You are becoming like you're losing yourself. You don't know who you are anymore. She's bending you to her will, without giving you sovereignty. She's love bombing you to make give you emotional confusion. And all of this, and she at some point, when she's psychologically dominated you and knows she's dominated you because you show desperation. Do you know? And then you are like, who am I anymore? I don't know. I've neutralized as a character, with this soul, around this soul. But then imagine you go with the other person, right? And the other person is the opposite. They see the real you. They can feel the real you. They can see what visions inspire your soul, and moments where they don't need to care, they care because they've been problem solving for you. A person would go into that other relationship instantly, because it's not about appearance or shape of something. It's about the maintenance of reality. Now a person could have this attitude that nobody's perfect. We take the imperfect and make it perfect, right? And I did have a deep debate with someone, where they were like, I don't believe people can change. And I was like, no, they can 100% change. you know She's- I'm telling you guys, all of you are looking for a world where your inner childs can feel safe and free. And humans are not designed to want to make reality make sense. Or to find the exact truth. Do you know? They're designed to move the moment along. This is why, to me, if they say who has the most advanced intelligence, like a rocket scientist or a next level programmer, or a Nobel laureate, or that guy who's like bar hopping, in some haze of vibe, do you know and goes and in some sense accumulates, even though irrationally, like way more experiences than they would rationally. you know Hey guys, welcome. Somebody in the chat section says, what am I talking about? Nothing much, man. I'm just talking about how I find the human species, the system that's managing all of us, is outdated. I feel like the way we're being humans is outdated, and I'm trying to give a talk on it. So welcome, guys. Anyways, I was saying something. What was I saying? Anyways, guys, it's about presence. So if I was to prioritize reality, of course, I see physical objects. Of course, I'm a physical being. Of course, when I'm hungry, I go and find food. You know, of course, it's like they're like, yo, man, why don't you use spiritual energy for nourishment? I'm like, I don't know, man. I rather drink this glass of water. It's just, so of course, I am not against us being physical entities. I'm against us only being physical entities when we obviously know we don't know. So let me tell you what human knowledge is like. So you're born and you're like this character, and you realize you're this person, and you realize there's 8 other people and they're all chatting. So imagine you opened your eyes and you saw 8 billion people standing and they're all waiting and having a conversation together. And you go up and you find someone and you're like, hey man, what's happening? You come to the realization that we are all waiting either for a surprise or for the actualization of our best vision through the furthest reaches of our awareness. Somebody in the chat section says, what do you mean system? Like leaders? Um, okay, let me give you an example. System is a geometry. in my view. Okay, let me explain. I'm going to explain it to you in a way that, I think many want to but can't. Um, when I say system, first of all, well done for asking that. You know, so system, guys. First, understand, or let me open it up to you. There's something called systems thinking. You look at different things in life and you can treat them as systems. You can treat your body as a system and the organs in your body as elements of the system. Do you understand? You can treat a room as a system, do you know? And in some sense, the stuff in the room as the elements in the system. And now there are open systems and there are closed systems. Now, when I say civilization is an outdated operating system, because it seems like they designed a closed system and they were like, we hope the future generations figure it out. That means, I'm not even kidding, guys, the forefathers of all nations, they had to like create a prototype. Like, I could totally understand the inventive vision back in the day. Let me tell you, it's the hidden language that the true generals of humanity speak to one another through the decades. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry, guys, give me a second. I need to. All right. So, system is one of my favorite words. Okay. And you can think of a static view on a system, a dynamic view on a system, an open system, a closed system, a visible system, an invisible system. Do you know? Pretty much, even right now, this a sentence can be treated as a system, each word being an element. And guess what? After you see the elements inside a system, you can wonder about their relationship. Are they independent? Are they interdependent? Do you know? Or how? Or usually it's interdependent. And so how does this interdependency work? How are the different elements of your life happening? How is my body, like, if you treat your moment of being as a system, an element of it is like, yo, my physical body, another element, the physical world, another element, the ideas I have that I'm calling this thing a physical world. And so you begin to see the different aspects that are present in your moment, and you need to, I don't want to say you need to have the courage, because that's considering you're a coward, and I don't believe the case. One of the greatest shows in existence and greatest stories in existence, do you know, which is called AOT, this show called Attack on Titan. I learned so much about the soul from that show. There's a moment, there's this character that's super smart, but he has fear. He's like the smartest character, one of the smartest characters in the show, and very kind hearted, but he has fear. And how they say there's something wrong with everyone? Like in Islam, this is, of course, very more, just, I guess, in a context of old times. But they had this view that anytime the children cry, because when they're born, shaitan, Satan, in some sense, pinches them. And so it was like a metaphor. I don't want to say metaphor, but it was this view that was saying that everybody has a bit of darkness in them. That means you're gonna find, like, don't for 1 second think anybody's perfect, or if there's someone who's perfect in all dimensions externally, guess what, they're not in their inner dimensions perfect, because the reason we live is to fulfill, meaning we're not full now. So when I am talking about this world as a system, okay, it is, I like it, this is the phraseology you should hear from me. This is what I've been saying. We are inside an existential simulated system. This existential simulated has mods like angels and devils, do you know? And in Shaitan, for example, and it has a system admin. The difference between the system admin and the mods and the users, and we're all in the user experience, do you know, is that the mods and the users are both created. God is not created. The system admin is not created. It is not a created being. Do you understand? Everything here is created. Everything has causation attributed to it. Do you know? They're like, yo, Mr. Within, something caused you to exist in this moment. And like, you know, it's like I don't know the domino effect that gone on before I was born, but I know now I'm here and I wonder why this is the world. So we are treating it as a known system. What does it mean? There is an unknown self, excuse me, there's an unknown world, unknown self, known world. Okay? Or better yet, I could say it, there is an unknown self experiencing an unknown world, and how it's experiencing and remembering and relating its experience is what we call knowledge. And are we satisfied with that? Are we satisfied with how much we know? The answer is no. No, we're not, you know? There is more. This cloud, there are clouds we don't see, hiding worlds we should see, you know? It is the presence of what is actually going on, do you know? While we're in the middle of what we think is going on. What is love? Do you know? And I've asked this from myself because you don't understand. There are some minds that take relationships only keep them external. I'm a mind that internalizes external relationships. Do you know? What does that mean? That means when I see something happening in a certain way, see, to me, existence is free imagination. It's like imagination that didn't need a brain to process it already exists, but the brain is projecting an overlay, right? So I'm trying to say that it's a it's an unknown system, and inside this unknown system, a known system. It's excuse me, it's unknown because it's an open-ended. We can't see the edge of the system, but we know something is happening. Like that's how we know like this world is a system. It's not a photograph. There's a movement in it. There's someone in the room that can move the stuff or has put the stuff in the room. Do you know? So we can so this world is displaying signs of having been interfered with, or I shouldn't say interfered. This world is too designed, folks. And if that makes you feel eerie, then I've done my job because that eeriness is essential. Okay, it's essential for you to feel uncomfortable, because if you don't feel uncomfortable, how are you going to update your system? Do you know, your operating system? And guess what? Isn't it interesting for you that in the outer realms you have been updating the external operating system all the time, from like brushing your teeth to like buying clothing to in some sense purchasing assets and all this whole civilizational game? But behind your eyes, has it been updating? Or has it been the same? Do you feel the same as childhood? As your childhood, do you feel the same? Are you still living in the same world? For how long have you been living in a world that looks the same every day? Be scared of that more than you're scared of anything else. Do you understand? Because I do understand. Yeah, like we get old, we need to loop in comfort. I'm not telling the senior citizens to like pick up swords and shields and run into a battlefield. You know, I'm saying we as beings are not just one. level of intelligence. That means in the same moment that I am being atoms, I am also being poetry, yo. In the same moment I am being poetry, the whole existence is happening, yo. And so this is the system. We're existing in it, just like how you open a bag of chips and like you just see the chips inside the bag. We've opened our eyes to existence. And what are we going to do with all this, all these chips? They're going to be like, what were some sacred, rituals, done by people, in the 2000s, and will be like, the purchasing of a Ruffles bag of chips and plain yogurt. That used to be like, and I don't know how people like, okay, it's going off topic. And folks, just to go full circle, I'm going to read for you the definition of a system: a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or an interconnecting network, a complex whole. And that's what really systems thinking means. That means you don't ignore the whole. So this is what I've noticed, okay? And I'm not being judgmental, but I got to say it. So the way children are raised in the West compared to how children are raised in Eastern countries is that the systems thinking stops at some point in the West, okay? But in the East, it doesn't. And there's advantages and disadvantages because sometimes you need to depend on things to discover how you can be independent. And sometimes you need to be independent to discover that you need to depend on some things in life, that it can't be done alone. And if it is done alone, then it was life is a punishment then, you know, right? I'm sure, I'm not that old, but I'm sure, like, I was in my like late 20s when I heard Jordan Peterson say this quote in a video where he's like, you don't want to be, you know, that old guy who's not married and has no one. And so this is what breaks my heart, and this is what also inspires the AI industry to replicate, that human beings need human communication, even if that communication is coming through artificial means, which it will in the future. What does that mean? That means it's happening, folks. There was this story of this husband going to his wife, and his wife had noticed the husband acting strange, and the wife's like, man, is he, is he, has his heart gone somewhere else? And so the husband, comes home one evening, sits with the wife and says, I got to tell you something. And the wife's like, all right, tell me, who you've been having an affair. And the guy's like, it's not that. And the husband says, I want to introduce you to my AI girlfriend. And even as a guy, I was like, what the fuck? That means husbands in marriages can feel so alone that an AI, do you know, girlfriend is replacing what the wife can't provide or the guy's friends can't provide, communication wise, right? And so, what does this mean? That means today it's the realm of fools, but the realm of the era of fools is ending. Do you know? I'm telling you, it's ending. And it makes the foolishness sacred. Do you know? If this foolishness is gonna be sacred. Do you know how we littered, how we weren't perfect from the beginning is going to be how sacred we are to the future that is raised in a automated perfection of a civilization. Do you know? That means the soul is not gonna be satisfied either way because it's in a dualistic world. It doesn't matter how much we advance it, it might crave the unadvanced. What an insight. Oh my God, what a realization. I keep forgetting. Yes, I do see man as having organized potential to build like advanced civilizations, advanced armies, advanced sky cities lifting into the air with great honor and vision. But I also see a playful, silly animal that just wants to relax and have fun. Right. So civilization has to be designed that way, I think, where people get paid for, like, see, it's about the vitality of the psyche of how our energy influences the energy of everyone else, right? Like what billionaires don't realize, if they all gathered around and gave one third of their wealth or something and put it in some like global humanity fund, right? Do you know? And I don't know, they kind of made it a sort of digital point system that any person who did a good deed or did something kind or nice or was healthy got more money. Everybody would act right. It's the hilarious thing about this time is they've assigned the money to the wrong behaviors. They've assigned money to self-destructive behaviors rather than, in some sense, collective constructive behaviors. Because who are we living for? And I want you to imagine, when, let's say, you go and ask, like, this senior couple, what are you guys living for? And they're like, we lived for our kids, and now our kids are doctors and engineers, and something like that, right? And I was like, look at what I'm saying, guys. When I've said so many times in the lectures that the advanced civilization is the greatest argument, and we're all indirectly living for the advancement of civilization. God bless my grandfather. He passed away. He was a very, very amazing soul. And I remember, I was like a little mischievous, and like overthinker. So one day I went to my grandparents, because my uncles and aunts were like fighting or something. I went to my grandparents, right? And I asked, like, I went to my grandfather and I asked my grandfather, and I was like, how did my grandfather raise my, like, aunts, and just like my uncles and just like my family, like my parent, do you know? And so I asked them, like, hey, grandpa, when you were a kid, like, what did you want your kids to become? Right. And I'll never forget, this was Iran, and he said, I wanted them to go and help society. That's what he said. That I realized that's what the family unit wants. The family unit, all families, do you know? All families want to, in some sense, be, like after you've taken care of yourself unit, you're taking care of your community. I'm telling you, like, we have seen humans care. It's natural. When there's nothing to lose, it is easy to care. And it's the fear of loss that makes us, choose greed, I guess. And you can think of somebody in the chat section said, what do you mean system? Like leaders? See, leaders are elements in the system. No, no, no. When I say the whole operating system needs to change, it doesn't mean, like, sure, the leadership changing leads to the operating system changing, but the leader is not the system. Do you understand? The leader is really the manifestation of a symbol. Okay. And in the future, most likely humans, I've written about this in my sci-fi, most likely the human species is going to vote on policies rather than people, because AI is going to know what to do. Okay, so we're going to vote for a human being to go into a very advanced AI computer and ask what that nation should do. Pretty much that's unless before that, every world leader listens to me and they become the greatest leaders in history, and they develop the United Species Council, the most important, one of the most important lectures I've given in my life. And I hope it's heard. I hope that my children will come home in the future. I don't have kids, but I'm imagining in the future, if I have kids, they'll come home and I'm like, "Hey, kids, how was your day?" And my kids are gonna be like, "We heard so in the morning we all stood up, you know, and we in some sense sang the United Species anthem." Every person, and it was live streamed with all the classrooms in all worlds, in all places in the world, like the whole species, at least in the time zone, the same time zone, the whole species, in some sense, honored how truly advanced we could be, how important it is to care for the human, you know. And the world has given Persians, sorry, the media has made Persians seem less caring than they actually are. I'm gonna read a quote from this poet named Sadi, this Persian poet Sadi. You know, he has this quote where he says, "Human beings are members of a whole." He said this like 800 years ago. This Iranian Persian poet. He said, "Human beings are members of a whole." WHOLE. Human beings are members of a whole in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. That last part, if you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. And I'm saying this is a command because we need to create space for the advanced humanity to awaken. And the advanced humanity are those human beings that care for the human experience. It doesn't matter through who it's happening. That means welcome to the human familia, the feeling that has been missing from all of our moments up to 2026, that feeling that we all belong to the same existential design class, that we are here to perform a role, to be something, to generate greater and greater meaning, even if that means, you know, endless human beings arising, twin countless human beings arising, one making a mistake, one be succeeding, and so many different ways. Like it's like legit a dictionary of 8 billion different kinds of, like, they're like, what is a human being? I'm like, there's 8 billion versions, yo. Oh, in total history, considering a 300,000 years range, it's 117 billion humans that have ever existed. So all of you who are alive right now, you're part of the 7% of humans that have ever existed. So we are representing a species existential class, and they've made this world so damn comfortable that you feel you're on Earth, you know, that you're in a nation, that you're in your house, and that's your home. That's how they've made you. And you must realize that the true home of all beings, its walls are edgeless. You know, it is the vision of man. And the Islamic, I shouldn't say Islamic, but I should say so there's this thing called, let me read it for you. There's this Sadi, that poet I was telling you about. There's this phrase he's used called Bani Adam, which means sons of Adam or human beings. Okay, so if I read it for you, it says Bani Adam, meaning sons of Adam or human beings, is a 13th century Persian poem by Iranian poet Sadi Shirazi from his Gulistan, which is his work. The poem calls humans limbs of one body, all created equal, and when one limb is hurt, the whole body shall be in unease. It therefore concludes that one not touched by the pain of others cannot be called a human. A translation of the first line of the poem was quoted by former US President Barack Obama in a videotape message to Iranians to mark Nowruz, the Persian New Year, on 20 March 2009. The poem is also inscribed on a large handmade carpet installed in 2005 on the wall of a meeting room in the United Nations building in New York. Okay, a famous Iranian carpet trader had gifted the precious carpet with Sadi's poem sewn on it with golden thread, with the condition that it should be displayed somewhere appropriate. Oh my God, that's such a Persian thing to do, to gift someone a carpet. You know, in 2019, British rock and band Coldplay featured the poem as spoken text in their song of the same name, listed as Persian Bani Adam as part of their eighth studio album, Everyday Life. No way, even Coldplay has shared this in their song. Okay, so what is the poem? It's so yeah, so it's the one I read. But anyways, it says human beings are parts of one body in creation. They're indeed of one. Or no, sorry. It says that human beings are members of a whole in creation of one essence and soul. Okay, no. So I read that version, and there's like a bunch of other versions. Okay, so anyways, the whole point of it is we cannot ignore the unity of the species, and that's what I'm telling you. So why is it not? It's outdated because you're identifying with just your own personal subject, like an idea of you is owning your whole moment, and that idea of you is identifying with just land and your immediate range of awareness, right? And this is where I'm saying we're going from nationalism to what they term as transnationalistic era, okay? And which means that we don't identify, like, this is the strategy I'm trying to implement here for our species, where I'm like, guys, I get it, you know, nations have been like paint on the face of a primitive person, but on the face of the earth instead, right? And I understand that we identify with our nations, but let's first identify with the human species. That means every time a human being is born, they're not just given a birth certificate, they're given this, like, this kind of like booklet that in some sense is welcoming them to the human species, giving values, the greatest values of the human species, and the greatest sectors that need help. And what, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to say it, but we need to identify with the species first, and then with nationality. Which, this is why I say all nations become sub nations of the nation of humanity. At least in my sci-fi, I've written this, explained it better. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. And when a species notices, its outdated operating system, it's gonna notice that it can update it. So the cool thing about noticing you're being outdated or unupdated is that you can update yourself now. Like, the reason for it is right there. And so, how do we find visions of greatness? We go as far as we can, because that is what the future generations deserve. The future generations deserve us advancing as far as we can. And then the moment they arrive, we're like, all right, you guys go further now, you know? And that's like, one of the beautiful visions of an advanced civilization. Sometimes greatness is realizing there's so many different views to one moment. Like, from another view, a person's character can even change. Somebody could look at a person and suddenly they do something, and their whole, like, the impression they have of that person changes in their mind, right? And of course, ultimately, we get to know ourselves better through the process. Thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced, God truly knows, the original unconditional being, has provided conditional simulated beings within a simulated testing zone within a divine surveillance state to know each other. So the nature of, I guess, the might of human vision. It's about the human odyssey. Start identifying with your species, not just a part of it. Begin caring for the human aspect. That means all human beings communicating to other human beings. That it means in your mind, like let's say if somebody's angered you, and like let's say even if you hate a person, right? In your mind, you should be like, okay, I am hating a member of the human species. Okay. Right. Like that thought should be the first thing, that we are, how do I say it? It's like there's a human kingdom here. Okay. And we are in that kingdom by design. We don't, just like a gym membership, the gym card is what we see in the mirror. It's a human being. Now, how advanced can human beings be? What's the point of each of them having different DNA, different viewpoint? Because all these different angles together assimilated leads to sort of greatness. Anyways, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced. Good night.